This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. How does a man spend 22 years behind bars, on death row for a crime he did not commit? Nick Yaris will tell you in excruciating, specific, and sometimes funny detail. His story, a true life story, is the basis of the Broadway play Fear of 13. Adrien Brody plays Nick throughout his life as he explains his circumstances to a woman who volunteers to visit inmates. She's played by Tessa Thompson. Their sessions, an hour each, go from introductory conversations to intimate revelations. They evolve into phone calls, and finally they fall in love. But Nick is on death row until there is a moment of hope. He might be vindicated, but alas, it isn't that simple, nor was the road that landed Nick behind bars. Fear of 13 is playing now at the James Earl Jones Theater, and Adrien Brody joins me. It's nice to talk to you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Which came first, your desire to do stage work as an adult or the script for Fear of 13?
Well, the fear of doing theater existed long before the play. I had not found some material that spoke to me quite like this piece. And Lindsay Ferrantino wrote such a beautiful, eloquent, nuanced story about this man's very complex and horrific circumstances that are indicative of greater injustice within our carceral system. And it moved me to the core. And I wept reading the script and had a very hard time audibly getting through the third act in early rehearsals when we first proceeded with it. So I felt compelled to do it based on the material and to take that leap that I had been yearning to get back to the stage, but it is quite daunting.
You met Nick Yaris, who's a consultant on the play. What questions did you have for him?
Well, Nick is a wonderful human being. He has this remarkable ability to convey great empathy and presence. And he does have quite a bit of presence. I'm not referring to his own sense of presence, but presence of mind and emotional clarity. And he lives in a very, I would say, meditative state. He has a lot of perspective, I would say, that many of us are less familiar with, of time and of the preciousness of the time available to us and how to spend that time. And what's most remarkable is through all the brutality and hardships he's experienced, he's managed to emanate a sense of light and real yearning to help others, and he's quite a considerate person. So he's gregarious, he's wild stories. He's had, just a remarkable, many lives. And so, yes, Nick offers a lot up. Yeah. You don't really get an opportunity to ask a question if I'm going to be honest. He's funny. Just so wonderful. And he wears it all on his sleeve.
Yeah,
and,
if you watch the documentary about him, you learn that he is an incredible storyteller. I'm curious, what is the key to being a good storyteller, and how does that relate to acting?
Oh, that's a really lovely question. Well, so much of our work as actors is telling stories through putting ourselves in the shoes of others and trying to find truths to inhabit and that we can relate to personally or find connections with that resonate with the audience and that resonate with ourselves. And so it is all, for lack of a better word, it is all storytelling. It is all about conveying things that should feel should move us, and it's a beautiful process of discovering that. So it's they're very much interrelated. I mean, the more you can connect, the less acting, so to speak, is required. And so if the stories are compelling and you can find that connection, then it's just a matter of connecting with that and sharing it.
We're discussing the Broadway show The Fear of 13, about a man who is wrongfully incarcerated. Adrien Brody plays the lead. He's our guest. The Fear of 13 is running at the James Earl Jones Theater. You play Nick from a little kid to a young man making bad decisions during his drug-addled period to being wrongfully incarcerated. What stays the same about Nick, and what changes about him?
Lovely question. Well, he's always had a wild streak and a mischievous quality, and I share that. And I think part of what drew me to this is an understanding of how, in growing up in Queens, and it's not that dissimilar, to what young people encounter in urban environments, and there's a lot of allure for mischievous young boys to just do things that are wild and fun, and you don't really have a sense of repercussions at that age. And I think Nick's story really illustrates how some wrong moves, other than other personal hardships, shaped him, but some wrong moves in his youth led one thing to another to get him into trouble with the law, which then led him to, somehow being implicated into things that weren't related to him and being powerless. And I think he evolves a great deal. He has tremendous, as I said, he understands so much through these experiences. It's a horrible education, but it is a big education. And I've spoken with numerous people who've spent a lot of time behind bars and how it's transformed their lives in enlightening ways, in discovery of theology and relationships to themselves and others. And Nick gained a great deal of insight through a tremendous appetite for reading and literature.
Yeah.
And
what did the books do for him?
Well,
because he loves to read.
Sure, I see it very clearly as an escape path, right? You find, sometimes even for us all to sit down and read, to be transported elsewhere if you're wrapped up in a wonderful book or stories, and that's the beauty of great writing. Is the beauty of art, of music, of great cinema. Anything that we can connect to that transports us to something is quite valuable. And I would think amidst all that excruciating oppression, he found great relief through great books.
In the play, Nick and Jackie, they meet for an hour at a time. What does Nick initially want her to know about him?
Well, I'll preface also that that hour was very precious. That hour was 1 hour once a week that he has provided access to someone. And the fact that this wonderful human being comes to see you and offers, is just listening and is just there. And I think that's the beauty of the work of people who take time to advocate and be supportive to people in horrific circumstances like being incarcerated, regardless of their own circumstances that got them there. They're human beings, and to have that sensitivity of somebody or someone's awareness goes a long way. And so, I think that is already a profound encounter for a man on death row. And then she has curiosity about stories and where it begins to kind of, I assume, to engage and help them find clarity for themselves. And, you just let him rip, and he just ends up being quite enthralling. And then, he clearly falls for her, and she feels moved by him, and they start this wonderful romance.
It's interesting because as the play goes on, you realize sort of the phone conversations are where the relationship starts to grow. What does it say in the script and the way that you and Tessa approach the phone conversations on stage?
Well, there's a lot of the writing and the storytelling devised to express a passage of time. And it's sometimes excruciatingly long windows and sometimes very rapid-paced encounters and an evolution of friendships and relationships. Phone conversations are special because you don't have the pressure. You don't have the pressure of, in this case, being in a prison, which even as a visitor is quite hard to witness and to hear someone's voice and allow your thoughts and imaginations to drift and theirs, and to get to know one another in that way is quite beautiful. And I love the way that it evolves, and we get to experience Jackie in her home and witness all these shifts in those time, the elapsing time through her lived experience, and yet Nick remains tethered to the floor or right in front of his stool in his cell, and I think that's quite dynamic and wonderful storytelling on Lindsay and David Cromer, our director's part.
It was interesting. Being in the audience, I closed my eyes during a certain part of that, and I realized that both you and Tessa have very beautiful voices.
Oh,
and that was an interesting way I thought,
she
because
has a lovely voice,
they don't see each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're just talking to each other and sort of getting to know each other that way. And I thought that was really beautiful in the script.
Yes, there's a section where she reads she reads a wonderful poem, and it's almost like ASMR. You hear her, you hear the page turn, and it's really quite amazing from my perspective in the center of that state of being to listen to that and to be given that. First of all, the craving to hear poetry or hear something that's so evocative and telling. The quote that she references is about time and about the grieving and longing over the passage of time, which very much speaks to a man in those circumstances. So to hear her say it so beautifully and softly, it's quite special, yeah.
Hope is an important theme in the show. What happens when you have it? What happens when you lose it? For a while, Nick has hope that he might be vindicated. How does hope affect Nick?
We begin the story without hope, with an unfortunate acquiescence to the circumstances, realizing that the system is more powerful than the individual, that the circumstances and the apathy and the bureaucracy have just erased a sense of closure or forward momentum with his case. And so he's just resigned. And as the story evolves, obviously, hope begins to blossom. And I think sparking feelings for another individual and to be the recipient of feelings of a woman under those circumstances, or anyone's who's been so lonesome for so long, is such a gift. So, of course, that elicits a great deal of hope. And then they have to navigate the continuation of the burdens of the system and life. And, you know, he does have hope. It is a hopeful story. You know, it's not a simple ending, but it is a hopeful journey. But it paints a very real picture.
We're discussing the Broadway show The Fear of 13, about a man who is wrongfully incarcerated. Adrien Brody plays the lead. He is our guest. The Fear of 13 is running at the James Earl Jones Theater. David Cromer is the director. He's a great director. What is a piece of advice that he gave you in the rehearsal process that you use every night?
I think what I love, you know, there's a wonderful austerity in this, the prison, the way that David has created the circumstances for my character and the limitations he's imposed on my physical movements have been very interesting. And so my character is quite confined physically through movement within the cell. Even in the storytelling, I am not really veering very much beyond that locale. And as things begin to open up and ultimately there is an opportunity to breach those walls, I think it makes it much more profound to witness. And I think is quite helpful to play with those obstacles, to be rooted to a stool without props, without anything, to essentially bear it all from a virtual box, while life kind of plays out around my character is very interesting. And a note that he's given that always stays with me is he's kind of ratcheted up an unpredictability and an intensity that I clearly relate to. I understand. I do. I find it very exciting that Nick kind of shifts on a dime. And I think it's unsettling, and I think that's unsettling for the audience, I should say, in the sense that there's always doubt. You know, most people attest to being innocent. There's always doubt. There's doubt in Jackie's mind. I think there's doubt in people's minds when someone recounts circumstances and have also been condemned. And I like the ambiguity that it creates, and I like I like that it for me allows me to reference a stunted youth that would have taken hold, I would say, if you're damaged at a young age and also further damaged through imprisonment and being surrounded by violence and the threat of violence and aggression and drugs and anything that comes in an individual's life early on in those formative years that shape you, and that so I think that volatility is something that I feel is indicative of a man trapped in his adolescence, that's working very hard through his mind and emotions to escape, but emotionally and physically, and in many ways, is bound by those restrictions, and so he's at odds with that. So that always exists, and that kind of explosive unpredictability and danger propels him.
The name of the play is The Fear of 13. It's starring Adrien, Brody. It's at the James Earl Jones Theater. Thank you for making the time to come in today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love talking with you. Thank you.
And that is all of it. I'm Allison Stewart. I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate you. I'll meet you back here next time.